It's a weird email. Yeah. Yes. All right. Or remember somebody else. See if I say. That's fine, John. I guess, yeah. Yeah, yeah, build what I heard. The whatever it's called, Prague Senate Committee, we created. You guys just doing like this. Yeah. My board has to take care of it. Just come to this. Yeah. Yeah. Great. Yeah, so the vehicle moving for dying. Small. Yeah. The date is October something.
Okay, so she's taking minutes, is she? You might want to message her just to make sure. Say that, she said that this morning, but we want to make sure. And then I'll just have you do the roll call. If you're okay with that. Then we can have her taking minutes, which will be nice. Yeah, in there. Oh, I'm never sure it's complete. We talked about this. I love that. Right. But she does have very much really the policies. Which Larry, he had brought.
Well, in this next thing.
It was a giant green owl.
So I.
Yeah.
We went this way.
I used to play golf.
So when we just.
Right. Okay, so when I bring. During discussion. Okay. It's up to you.
No, we don't. Yeah. We don't need nothing.
Yeah, so, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I had my dad. Yeah.
Passwords.
Yeah.
That's
Really
good.
touching.
Yeah.
Speech. Like he looks at the song, sign.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fine.
You good with them?
Just pick up.
Oh, yes.
So.
Yes. All right. All right. Leah, are you ready?
Yes.
Okay, Jules, can you hear us?
Yes, thank you.
And you're gonna go ahead and take our minutes, correct?
That's correct.
All right, well, welcome everyone. It's so exciting to see so many of you in person today. We greatly appreciate it. We are here for our September 14th monthly meeting. Just a couple quick updates. I'd like to introduce our new CFO, Jim Quinn. So Jim, do you just want to,
Oh, sure, sure.
quick introduction?
Yeah, this is exciting. I've spent my whole career in public service. Last 11 years as a CFO at the Ohio Department of Education. In education, we manage lots of grants, lots of contracts. We're probably the most audited state agency. So I have experience with all of those things. And like so many of you and so many Ohioans, have been affected by this opioid addiction. So is my family. And so when I got the opportunity to give back in this way, talked with Larry and Catherine, and I was like, yeah, this seems like someplace where I can help you get going. I just started, so I look forward to it, and thank you. Welcome aboard.
Thank you. Also, we were able to hire a board secretary. Unfortunately, Jules was not able to be here. However, she is on virtually, so welcome, Jules Coleman. Jules, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Sorry I don't get to meet you in person, but I am very happy to be here. I have a couple of years of experience as an administrative assistant at various nonprofits. And most recently, I worked at the Columbus Association of Realtors on their development team for their political action committee and their foundation. So I have a couple of years of experience working with nonprofits. But I am very excited to be here, and I hope to meet all of you in person next meeting. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. All right. Leah, can you call to roll to establish a quorum?
Bambi Vaughn. Here. Mike Beasley. Richard Brown.
Here.
Josh Cox. Here. Judy Dodge.
Here.
Denise Streethouse.
Here.
Julie Amon. Here. Jeffrey Fix.
Here.
Tom Gregor.
Here.
Marcia Handrew.
Here.
Keith Hopadell.
Here.
William Hudson.
Here.
Larry Kidd.
Here.
Evan Kleinmeyer.
Here.
John Mason.
Here.
David Mattia.
Here.
Greta Mayer.
Here.
Rob McCauley.
Here.
Glenn Miller.
Here.
Gil Pavliga.
Here.
Dwayne Piccarilli.
Here.
Jane Portman. Michael Rosen. Eileen Shapiro. Jeffrey Simmons. Christopher Smitherman. John Tharp. Catherine Whittington.
Present.
Annette Worsbicky.
Here.
There is a quorum established.
Thank you, Leah. Before we get to actual business, we have two new members with us today. Judge David Mattia from Region 3. If you'd like to give a quick introduction.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm David Mattia. I've been a judge for 24 years in Cuyahoga County Common Police Court. I started our first felony level drug court in the county in 2008. Probably seen over 1,000 individuals. I like to joke, I have one of the largest behavioral health clinical practices in Cuyahoga County. I was former president of the Ohio Common Police Judges Association. I've been involved on the governor's Recovery Ohio initiative. And the docket that I run now is the medication-assisted treatment docket. I'm a big supporter and believer of medication-assisted treatment, MAT. It's a science-proven leader, and I hope this foundation supports that as we go forward. But I'm honored to be part of this, and thanks for having me.
Thank you. Welcome. And our other new member is Evan Kleinmeyer, and he was appointed by the Minority Senate Leader. So welcome. And Evan, if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Evan Kleinmeyer, Senior Vice President of the Ohio Bankers League. We're the trade association representing all the banks in the state of Ohio. I spend most of my time meeting with banks in every nook and cranny of the state of Ohio. And one issue I hear consistently, a top issue, is how the opioid epidemic has caused harm to their communities. So look forward to working with the board.
Welcome, thank you. Great. The first order of business is the approval of the minutes from August 10th, 2022 board meeting. May I have a motion? So moved.
Second motion.
Any discussion? Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Next, we are going to do the selection of committee chairs. And the first committee, we're going to do this as a slate. So the first one is our investment committee. Do I have any recommendations from the floor?
Don Mason.
Second?
Yes.
I'll second Don Mason.
All third, all fourth.
Thank you. For the finance and audit,
Move Larry Kidd, please.
Second.
thank you. Personnel committee,
Julie Elman.
Second.
thank you.
Other people can say it, it's not my thing.
I think you're the second guy
Yeah, I
today.
guess
And then the grant oversight committee,
I would recommend Tom Gregor.
Gregor.
Second.
all right, so we have Don Mason for investment, Larry Kidd for the financial and audit, Julie Amon for the personnel, and grant oversight is Tom Gregor. Any discussion?
Make a motion that we adopt that slate.
You? Second. Did you get the second? Jules?
Could we repeat the name of who seconded that motion, please?
Jeanette Worsbicky.
Thank you.
Did you get that? It's Jeanette.
Yes, thank you.
All right. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you. Next up, we have the Code of Regulations. You all received a copy of the code. We've been working on this for several months now. So I will need a motion.
This is Hudson. I'll make a motion to approve.
Second Miller.
Any discussion?
Yeah, I mean.
Holly, maybe you want to address, I had our prosecutors review it, and there was some question about the public officials on it, so. Holly, I know you all worked it out, so, or Marty, you did.
Yeah, so you want to make this amendment? is
I'm
that
gonna make a
what you're
amendment to it.
Correct.
I'll let you talk about it in legalese.
It's section 3.11. There was some concern expressed. I had a call with Dwayne and Mark Alito, who is the assistant county prosecutor in Mahoney County. They were concerned about some of the language maybe giving some more exposure, personal exposure than they were comfortable with. So what we've done is, and I'm going to read it, I'm going to read the whole section, and when I get to the new words, I'll emphasize them. So it's a very short section. 3.11, under Ohio Ethics Commission guidance attached here to its Appendix C, individuals serving as directors on the board shall not be considered public officials by reason of their appointment to and service on the board, period. That stays the same. The next and only sentence to follow will simply read, individuals who are otherwise public officials shall continue to be bound by the requirements of Ohio ethics laws. There was language in there that said nothing about being on this board could make you anything other than a public official if you already are one, and we're like, yeah, really? I don't think that was helpful language.
second the motion.
So that's what we're gonna do. If you're, so we have
We have an amendment.
a motion and a second. So
Okay.
discussion.
Catherine, I have a request. You want to dispose?
Someone please restate the amendment for the minutes.
I can send it to you. I think I could just send it to you, Joe.
Thank you.
Does anybody else need me to restate it?
So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
And I might have additional.
We're gonna do them separate, one at a time. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Larry?
I actually have two. The first one is on section 1.02 purpose, paragraph A, unit in 4, decrease the oversupply of illicit and illicit opiates. I think we want to be more inclusive, so I would suggest the language of including opiates and or other concurrent substance abuse items, which was actually taken from the 7th. On 1 Ohio Exhibit A, page 1, for Ohio Big Strategies. Or do you want to maybe just
Under purpose.
Oh. Sending this to.
Yep, I don't see any problems with that. This language was, taken from. I just want to check. It may have come from the Articles of Incorporation, but that might be further down. But if it's the pleasure of the board, I could see any.
So the purpose is to expand it from just opiates.
I concur with that. I think it's really important in using the term opioid and substance use disorders. I think that's really important.
I second the motion, Mr. Chair, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any further discussion on that? Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Okay, you had a second one?
And then on the same section, 1.02 purpose, C, I'm trying to find where to add a 7-word language. We talked about that earlier. Do you have that 7 language?
I have section 102 where we had discussed to fund the programs and services described in section A, moving down to where it says process funds to private organizations and government agencies that benefit the local community and are engaged in such programs. So it's just adding the words that benefit the local community.
Second that motion.
Joel, could you get that? Or do we have-
I got it.
Got it, right?
Okay, any further discussion on that? Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Are there any other amendments?
So perhaps not a specific amendment, just a point of discussion or question. Under on page 11, section 6.02, selection of the executive director. The candidates, item B, the candidates for executive director shall have at least 6 years of experience in addiction, mental health, and or public health, and management experience in those fields. And while I appreciate that should be part of what we're looking for, when we're talking about managing what will someday become $1 billion foundation, to me, we're going to have so many experts in the room around mental health and addiction that, to me, it's almost more critical that someone knows how to run a foundation of this size than it is that they're deeply versed in addiction issues. We've got all kinds of people in this room today, and we're going to add so many experts that I'd rather have someone who can run the business and listen to those experts than someone who's an expert that doesn't know how to run the business. And I'm not suggesting we hire someone that doesn't know how to run the business. It's just this, the way this is written, it's like that's the primary thing we're looking for. And I don't feel I'm not confident.
Chair, that's, Jeff, that's language that comes directly from the MOU. I believe it was negotiated as part of the MOU discussions.
Could we add to that then the concept of someone who has experience running some kind of nonprofit or foundation? And stop me if this doesn't make sense. I'm sorry. I know.
I don't think it has to be in the code, but if it's the board, it's up to the board's discretion if you want to include it in there.
Holly, wouldn't we have the flexibility of making a slight change like that to,
You could just put it in the job description as something that you're.
I mean, I'm talking about the 6 years.
Oh.
If we changed it to his point to preferred, which we would certainly have the ability to hire somebody that has 6 or more years, but if we found somebody, and he's right, there are gonna be a lot of extra people working for the organization. That may not be as critical as the individual or the contacts the individual has.
I would say it's up to the board how closely you would like to mirror the MOU. We tried to mirror it as closely as possible where, except for an instances where it does not comport with existing law, either tax law or nonprofit law.
Are there any legal ramifications if we were to make a change?
If I might, Madam Chair, I think if it's the sense of the board that they want to add something to this definition, relative to financial management or foundation management or something like that, I don't see legally a problem with doing that. Then it's certainly an appropriate addition. It's not already in the job description, and it may well be. I just don't have the job description memorized today. But there's a sense of the board what you want to do. There's no legal problem that I can see.
Who's recognized here? I don't think we're gonna have an issue attracting qualified candidates with 6 years' experience, frankly. I think it's in the MOU because it's important to have someone with experience in this field who has the passion to see this. There's certainly capable of hiring infrastructure help for someone who may not have the amount of experience, but I think we're going to find there are plenty of social service agencies in the state. I'm on the board of the Centers and Families and Children in Cleveland. That's one, if our executive director wanted to apply, he's got experience and with opioids and with leading a large organization. So I appreciate your concern about that, but I think we pause on this. If we find that we have a lacking pool, we can revisit this maybe later.
Yeah, and I'm okay with not doing this today. Somewhat, knowing that as we go on this recruiting path, I'm hopeful that, as the folks who are on that committee will focus as much on the leadership role of running. And this is a huge organization. There are not many jobs in the state that are running billion-dollar foundations. It's a big deal. So focusing on that as well as the passion, right? Finding someone who has both of those it's critical. And I'm not going to hold this up today to make sure that it's in here unless someone can come up with a quick sentence that we can put in. But it's I think it's important as we make that decision. Yeah.
Well, and with all due respect, Judge, what if a fantastic judge applied for this? Under these terms, they wouldn't be qualified if they didn't have, I guess you could interpret that they had some interaction, but they would certainly have the knowledge of a lot of the different aspects of how to run the foundation with this.
I think a judge would frankly be qualified. I mean, I'd have a much lower handicap if we didn't have drugs or alcohol.
But I'm concerned, as Jeff is, if we pigeonhole ourselves too much, then we may be losing some excellent candidates that we just, and I'm not so sure under this, a judge would pull. I don't know. We would have to debate that. But before I go on, before we go on, but to Jeff's point, we don't really have much time. We do need to make a decision today because the RFP is already out. We're going to be making a selection on the search committee, which has direction of where we go with it. So we really need to make a decision pretty soon of what we're going to do.
This is Hudson. With all due respect, I view the provision in the code as a minimum qualification. It's not describing the maximum qualification, so the board can set whatever parameters it wants to set as long as that one requirement is met. So I trust our board. I think we'll make a good decision in the selection of an executive director. And I don't think that we need to get that granular in the code of regulations as to what the qualifications are going to be. Just my thought.
If you wanted to do a simple amendment, you could add 6 years of experience in foundation management, addiction, mental health, just simply add that there's a requirement around foundation management. Because I think there's two separate things that I hear everyone talking about. One is that you want this person to have experience with running a foundation. And the second is that you don't want to be totally bound by the current language that comes from the MOU. I would caution in changing the language of the MOU, but I think it's fine to adopt
Could you
that.
read then what that section would look like?
The candidates for executive director shall have at least 6 years of experience in foundation management. That's the additional language. Addiction, mental health, and/or public health and management experience in those fields.
See, I think that narrows it.
So
Narrow the pool.
with all due respect, I think changing the MOU language in the code, it could be problematic. And I think we have a search firm, we have a job description, that will all come back to the board. And at that time, I think the board then, if there is a candidate that they feel maybe doesn't meet the experience that we're looking for, that we could at that time either reject or look for another, there's going to be a few candidates put forth. And I think that's where we vet it out. I caution the board to change MOU language in the code of regulations.
I appreciate what you're saying, and it's definitely not a hill I'm willing to die on, so I'm okay with leaving it as it is today. Just wanted to at least plant the seed of the conversation that, to me, and hopefully to others, having that foundation management experience is as important as the passion. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Are there any other amendments?
Back to section 102. Involvement in Recovery Ohio and just being a drug court judge, there is a workforce shortage in this nation and this state. And I don't have any language in mind, but I would like section 1.02A to also include, give us the option of supporting workforce development programs, for people who want to be case managers and addiction psychiatrists. And I'm not sure that as it's as the 5 subcategories in A give us that flexibility.
So there is, that language does come directly from the MOU and the Articles of Incorporation. If you look at the abatement strategies, it's a 13-ish page document. There's another one in the other settlement. It sets forth the approved purposes, and I believe workforce development is included in there, so it is permissible. We can double check that. But again, A comes directly from our articles of incorporation. So I think if you changed this, then they should at least conform. I would caution against it. I have that list of approved purposes too.
This is kind of fun watching a judge and a lawyer go back and forth.
I'll take your word for it if you've seen it. Yeah.
It's a pretty substantive, well
Good.
thought out list that many individuals had their eyes on. But I will check on that for you.
That goes along with Recovery Ohio and Governor DeWine's strategy for workforce development as well.
Yeah.
And I, just the ability to break dollars will be helpful.
So that's actually on page 7 of the abatement strategies in the workforce section.
Okay, perfect. That's what the document that I was looking for.
Sorry.
Move to call the question, Madam Chair.
Pardon me?
Move to call the question.
Second.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Congratulations. Thank you so much to everyone who's worked so hard.
One point of order real quick. The motion was to call the question, and it wasn't to adopt the question. And so there needs to be another vote
Another
or
motion.
another roll call on the actual question.
I thought that we were then moving forward with Larry had one last one too.
Okay.
I do have a suggestion before we're done. Sorry. Section 3.08C regarding quorum in attendance. I would like to see a sentence maybe added to state that the chair shall inform the director and the appointing authority in writing if the minimum attendance requirement is not met, something like that. I mean, I see here that everybody's expecting 75% to attend 75% of the meetings, but I don't really see any action if somebody doesn't. So I think we should inform the board member or the director in this case, as well as the appointing authority. If somebody fails to attend 75% of the meetings in one calendar year.
Which number is?
3.08, page 5.
So it's a notice requirement that he's asking for to both, not just the director, but also the appointing body. Yeah. There's some language around removal, Catherine, like removal of a director and the, because of the unique appointing authority of the board.
Right.
So I don't.
I didn't quite understand.
Oh, yeah, so under, the attendance requirement of 75%, give notice to the director, have the chair or the executive director give notice.
Oh, to someone who's not.
The appointing authority as well as the director,
Oh, okay.
that they are out of compliance. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you from over there.
Okay. I need a motion
You still have a motion.
on the floor.
Yeah.
Motion was
What?
What's the question?
So we called the question already.
You called the question.
Right, so now someone needs to make a motion to adopt the code of regulations, right?
So the motion
Somebody could rescind their motion to call the question. We could go back to accept this amendment.
We've already voted on this. We can't rescind it. Only, I move to vote on the code as amended.
Second.
So that we adopted the most recent amendment. That's the issue.
We have not adopted this
I know.
amendment.
So there's this amendment still, and apparently there's another amendment that still needs to be adopted.
What was the amendment on the table before he made the motion to call the question? Because that's the one that's still outstanding and is required to be called as a result of the motion to call the question.
I think it was the workforce by the judge.
There was never a motion.
There was never a motion.
Jules, what was the prior motion?
Currently, the motion that I have on the table is the only one that there was actually a motion for was I believe to call the question. The amendment to include substance abuse items passed. Larry Kidd's amendment to benefit the local community passed, and no motion was made regarding the executive director or workforce development. Is that correct?
So then someone called the question. So we need to, do we need a motion to just reopen the discussion? John, would you be comfortable with that? We haven't voted on the code yet. We don't want to wait another month.
Well, if there was no question on the floor when you made the motion to call the question, the motion would have been out of order.
Yeah.
So I don't know that we need to reopen anything. I think you can, if there's no open question on the floor, then he can make the motion that he made just now, which would be to accept the amended version of the code of regulations.
Sorry, can I just clarify? Because Jules, there were two motions. The first was related to 1.02 to add opioid and substance use disorder. We voted on that. Then there was a second motion. I think Julie added it regarding to the benefit of local communities. I think, was that voted on?
Yeah.
Yes.
We voted on three.
Yes.
And how was the first one we talked about?
Yeah,
We
that's
voted on
included.
yours. We voted on three motions. The question, just cutting through all the procedural, the question really is, what do you, practically speaking, what do you want to do about the amendment on giving notice to the appointing authorities of absenteeism? Because where we are procedurally is we've called the question, we go ahead and we vote on the code, and it does not include this amendment. So
I
you want to
is it
figure
somewhere
out what to do about that.
is there somewhere the MOU spells out about removing board members? I don't see a problem with letting them appointing authority know the person showing up, just as a procedural thing. I just
I
think
agree.
it's a bad,
I think that's a good idea.
and it doesn't affect anything with the MOU. We'll still do what we have to do, but I think the appointing authority should know the person's not.
I think that's a good idea.
The question is, do you want it in the code of regulations? That's the question.
So this is Hudson. In my opinion, it's again getting too granular. It does not need to be in the code. Just as a matter of operations, if we have a member who is not fulfilling their duties, the chair can contact their region and tell them that, or their appointing authority and tell them that. It's up to the appointing authority then to take action. So I would not recommend that we adopt a change to the code for that purpose.
There's been- Please, having. Are you, Marcia, are you comfortable with making it a procedural thing?
Yeah, that's fine.
The motion to accept the code of regulations with the amendments has been withdrawn.
So I make a motion to,
What section of it?
3.06I.
yeah, no.
There's any.
But you might,
I'm not gone about it.
You should.
I think he means that.
Yeah, that's actually. I don't know what you got. I don't think I don't want to buy. She looked at me, she got a sign. I said, okay. Yeah. I had problems. We were laughing. So. So. No, the jigsaw. We have our perspective. This, the one of the he was, as we refer to it, is where the jail is. It's also where our. Yeah. So the jail.
But the dog, if I give something, goes out of the line.
My building
I'll say, I'll try to do it. I'll let you. I just can't wait. Son of that. And center. No, center in the. Yeah. Probably.
I close it down. Lights are not really getting down. I was there until.
Yeah. Is this actually the rubber school for
Can you guys hear us virtually?
procedures?
Denise Treehouse, can you hear us?
Hear the voice.
Yes, yes, we can hear you.
Is it, we are going to get back to work. Thank you. So we will need a motion now to approve the code of regulations with the amendment.
So moved.
Mrs. Hudson, so moved.
We have a first and a second. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. That was tough. It's only taken 4 months. All right. Well, now I can say thank you to all those who have put in the blood, sweat, and tears into this and bringing it to the table and getting it to a point where everyone can agree and get it passed. So thank you. Next, we have our transparency policy.
Was included in the board packet. The only changes that were made were to conform with the code of regulations that you just adopted. And it would include, the last draft policy did not include openness to the public for committee meetings. It was the desire of the board to add that back in. So that's back into the transparency policy. It was sent out to the board last week.
Yeah, it came with the code last week.
May I have a motion?
Move to adopt.
Second. Any discussion? Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries.
Next is the gift acceptance policy.
We have, I mean, I think for the next, the gift acceptance, record retention, and whistleblower policies are very self-explanatory. They haven't been changed since the beginning. We had a number of board members review and through a working group process early on. These were the ones that were non-controversial, no questions arose.
Okay.
We think they speak for themselves, but if anyone has any questions, we're happy to answer. They're just good business practice to adopt and have them follow.
So I think we could do those as a slate.
May I just make a point of clarification back to what Larry Kidd had, I'm sorry, yes, Larry Kidd had mentioned around the language of substance use disorder. If we could just simply carry like a technical kind of thing here, just carry that language that we approved in the Articles of Incorporation all the way through the same language, opioid use disorder and substance use disorder.
We can make those changes throughout the code. I did,
Just to be consistent.
in the review, there was a couple of areas where that fix could be made. So I can make
In the
sure,
policies?
in the 3 policy.
Okay.
amendments, yeah, there's just a couple of areas.
May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries.
That was just for the amendment.
So
So moved. I moved it without as the policies.
all the, thank you. We have a first and a second. Any discussion? Any abstentions? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next, we have the Executive Committee Spending Authority.
Madam Chair, I would request, now that we have Jim as the CFO on board, we can finalize the budget. But until that time, over the next 30 days, until the budget's approved, we'd like to request some up to spending money by computer, software, really get some of the operations started. So for the next 30 or until the next meeting, we would request $25,000 from the board, up to 25,000 to allow us to go, again, buy computer software, you know, whatever else that we might need to.
Laptop for Jules.
This is Hudson. I so move.
Okay, you got it first,
Second.
second. Catherine, you got first and second.
Okay, well, before we do that, I'd like to make a statement. Just so everyone is aware, this morning I received notification that the Attorney General has wired and deposited into the account $1 million for operational startup. So we are very appreciative and thankful for those dollars, which is why we are looking to put on a spending piece so that we can start building our infrastructure for the foundation.
I mean, with all that money in the bank, we should move it up to 26,000.
It should be noted that the $1 million funds are outside of the MOU.
Yes,
and
they are.
the
They are not part of the MOU settlement dollars. They are part of Attorney General settlement dollars. So again, we are very appreciative to the Attorney General for depositing those dollars for us to be able to start moving the foundation forward.
So just a quick question. Where are you working at?
Where am I working out of?
Home?
Home.
Okay. So someday we'll have an office, I assume, right?
Which is part of structuring.
Right. Okay.
the foundation is, to have a home.
Right.
To have an address. These are things that, we can now start working on and get secured. We have Kim in place, we have Jules, our board secretary. So we'd like to, I'm sure Benish would eventually like not to be the home of the foundation. We're currently using their address. So we would like to, that's another priority for us to get a location.
Madam Chair, the $1 million, is that just a transfer, a temporary transfer, or is that the permanent?
It's permanent.
It's permanent. Okay, thank you.
Let's really look at Kinsey settlement, which was settled before the MOU was signed.
Correct. Okay, so we have a motion on the floor and a second. Any further discussion? Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries.
Madam Chair, I have two more items. The second one is, as we move forward, it's going to be a challenge for, whether it's Jim or anyone else, to make any purchase without a credit card. So I'm requesting board approval to secure a credit card for the organization. And if somebody can set a limit, that's fine. Or Jim, if you have a recommendation on the limit. But we were thinking Huntington, since they're, we have the money to announce that anyway.
I'll make a motion to approve getting a credit card affiliated with our arrangement.
I'll second that.
First and a second, any further discussion?
I have a question, just for clarification for information. The check and balance and credit card, it'll be reviewed by the chair or someone, just, it's important as the minutes, I trust everybody, it's just, I know.
No, that's it, yes.
In the finance company.
I'm sorry, I didn't, this is Christopher Smitherman. I can't hear that part of the discussion about the checks and balances regarding the credit card. Can that would be repeated?
I'm sorry, my question was, just that so we can say out loud for the minutes what the check and balances were. And it's very satisfying with that factor to me. The finance committee plus the chair would review the credit card usage and that seems acceptable.
And we will be, there has to be approval for certain purchases. So those will always be brought back to the board for approval.
And I knew that you would, I just think something they said out loud.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Any other discussion?
I just want to understand, this is Christopher Smitherman again out of Cincinnati. I just want to understand there's not going to be a limit on that credit card. The oversight will be internally, and then those items that are being purchased, I guess, that are outside of, I'm going to use the word norm, will come for a vote here. Just trying to understand the checks and balances around the credit card use.
Just put a spending limit for 25K for the next month.
Chris, we just approved 25,000 for the next 30 days
Got it.
until the budget's approved. So it would all be within the 25,000 with reasonable expenses for startup operations. And then after that, it'd be within the budget.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Any other discussion? Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries.
And then the last item that I have has to do with insurance, and we have it down below as item discussion, but actually I'm going to request approval to increase the insurance. We were able to secure director and officer insurance, but it was a challenge. Our agents shopped 30 different insurance carriers, only one accepted us. Our limits right now are only $3 million aggregate, which is not significant for the size of the organization. You gave me approval last meeting to spend up to 50,000, actually it was 52, so I request approval to, get the additional, I think it's 52.5, spend the extra, 2,500. But also to go back, the insurance agent feels that that's probably not adequate enough coverage at 3 million, considering it's aggregate as all of us. He would suggest at some point we get up to either 15 or 25 million, not necessarily today, but he would suggest bumping that level up to at least 5 right now, which will be another 50,000. And that does not include any fraud insurance. Now that we have money, that we do need fraud insurance in case there's a wire transfer that gets intercepted and we lose X amount of dollars. So, right now I'm requesting another $100,000 to spend on insurance up to.
Make that motion.
Why do you think there was, so little interest?
Because it's a startup. There's a question if we're gonna get our 501(c) status. It still hasn't been determined. It's opiates and insurance companies don't like it, even though we're granting money. They just are nervous about the whole opiate situation. So it was a real challenge. As a matter of fact, the carrier's out of London. It's not Lords of London. They couldn't even find anybody in the United States to carry it. So it was quite a challenge. And this, we had to go to an international agent to be able to even get those. It was a challenge.
Yeah, I might add, we had 2 different agents looking, and very finally went to an agent who writes essentially companies that insure worldwide, because we had something like 30 turndowns between the 2 agents. It's nuts, because we're not doing anything with opioids, but, you know, they're just afraid, and they refuse to write it, so we're sort of stuck.
Let me say this, I've, not for this entity, for 2 other entities have filled out these forms. And I mean, they have questions, have you adopted employee policy, sexual harassment policy? I mean, there's a whole list of things that you have to adopt in order to file an application. And unfortunately, we're not even to that point yet where we can actually say we've checked each of those boxes. So I sort of appreciate, it's almost like you can't fill out the form, you can't be insured.
We had a lot of limits.
Yeah.
And it doesn't help that we have 2 lawsuits pending against.
Yeah, and that's true too, yeah.
So the motion was to spend up to $50,000 additional insurance, correct?
Yes.
Well, that's for the DNO and then another 50 for the fraud, which we have to have the fraud insurance.
$100,000.
Additional.
It is 100.
Motion for $100,000 additional for insurance. And we're looking for a second.
I second.
Do we have a limits on the fraud policy?
I do. I can pull it up during the meeting and give it to you after.
It's more than the 3 million for,
Oh, fraud is significantly more.
okay.
And of course, for those who aren't familiar, these premiums for both the DNO and the fraud are related to ultimately how much money will be responsible for us. Doesn't get any better.
He's pulling it up right now, Judge.
Actually, on this one, prime is per million, with a deductible of 25,000, so we were gonna bump that up. So it would be 4 million, or 2 million at 50,000. Which is still low, but now one thing the agent did tell me is after their first year under our belt, then the rates will probably go down significantly because they have some history on us.
Yeah. So it's it'll be a $50,000 premium, a policy that million, okay, but
Four.
Up to four, okay.
And do you know anything about fraud protection through the banks? That would be, that's another like add-on. that we could do.
Insurance offering, right? You can buy fraud protection on large transfers and others.
Louder, please.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, you can purchase fraud protection for different transactions you know that are coming up. You can't buy fraud insurance through. So probably a conversation on intended for big transfers or wires.
Thank you. So we have a first and a second. Is there any other discussion? Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries.
And that covers my insurance.
Okay, next, I'd like to introduce Tony Luck and Kevin from Trust Digital. I'm gonna come up here, No, that's fine.
Sure.
So they are our marketing and communication team. And they're going to give us an update on what's been going on and what they've been doing.
Great. Well, thank you all for having us here today. I'm glad we could finally meet in person. Sorry, I couldn't be here in August. I was out of state, but was listening in by phone. But you know, Kevin and I have been working with Catherine especially closely over the last several weeks. And I know this update from our standpoint is a long time coming. We've been hard at work doing a lot for the foundation. And we're excited to run through some of those things today. But I think just first and foremost, thank you all for your confidence in us to be a partner in this. We certainly understand the important mission that sits before the board and the foundation and our role in that. So thank you all for the opportunity. We've been kind of in front of the board in different ways over the last several weeks. But if you've not had a chance to learn about our companies, our backgrounds, my background is in strategic communication, media relations, crisis communications, but also government affairs and campaigns. So that kind of broad spectrum, and I'll let Kevin share a little bit about his background.
I'm the nerdy tech guy who makes sure that things work right. So my background is in branding, marketing, and a lot of behind the scenes infrastructure building. So we'll get into this here in a little bit, but our big project lately has been the website. And hopefully some of you have had a chance to look at that since we launched that on Monday. So we'll dive into that here a little bit, but and we'll make sure all of you have our contact information as well. We thus far have been working extensively, with the board leadership and the legal team to make sure that we're checking all the boxes we need to. But we really want to underline and stress that we want your ideas and we want the collaboration on this because many of you have a lot more experience in this realm than we do, certainly. And if there are elements that, we need to get added to those platforms to better educate folks about what we're doing here, we want those ideas. So we'll make sure you have our contact information as well.
Great. We think about communication. I think the first thing we do is, who are our audiences and what is our goal? And our goal here as a communication team is pretty simple. It's to create this environment that allows the board and the foundation to be successful in moving this very important mission forward of supporting treatment, recovery, and prevention of substance use disorder and abuse in our state. And I don't think anybody in this room needs any kind of overview of how serious the issue is and how important the mission is. And again, we are very focused on being a solid partner for you all in, this work moving forward. There's a lot that we're going to be doing over the next several months, but most immediately, there were a few priorities that will remain our focus to make sure that Ohioans are properly introduced to the foundation. I think, there are so many things happening all the time. We all know news cycles and we know how much information is thrown out. So cutting through the noise and helping to really educate Ohioans about what the foundation is, what its mission is, who it is, what it will be working with communities and other partners to accomplish are really key. But also, it's very important that we are clearly, regularly communicating with our stakeholders. And we really couldn't do that very well until we had certain tools in place. So Kevin's going to talk about the first really kind of key digital priorities that he led that then establish those tools and resources that we will utilize moving forward to continue that open line of communication with Ohioans to share these updates with them about the good work the foundation will be doing and continue to do moving forward.
Yeah, so as we mentioned before, we launched the website on Monday. Hopefully you've all had a chance to take a look at that. It is the base level foundation that we need in place. Now, what we've also been doing behind the scenes, and you may or may not know, for some of you who are tech savvy or not, that there's the tools that are on the surface, like social media accounts, like email lists, like systems that allow us to send emails that are critical. And so we've started to use those. We've sent a few things out this week already. We have a little bit of work to do. One of the challenges, those of you that have worked with other organizations or maybe even in your own capacity, it's difficult sometimes to get emails out to folks. A big reason, especially for law firms, is a great example. They have very, very rigid and strict spam filters in place. So we're going to start some personal outreach first and foremost to make sure that each of you, the board members, are able to receive the emails that we're sending out. But this is something we're going to be working on behind the scenes constantly as people sign up to do everything we possibly can to make sure that emails are getting into inboxes and whatnot. This is something that I professionally specialize in. It's not easy. It's super IT tech savvy, but we'll figure out a way to get it done. Social media accounts, we also launched those. If you're looking for those links, you can find them on the website. We are going to be using those for everything that comes out, in a media release that's put on the website after these meetings happen, and we are posting the videos and related documents online. We will make sure that we are posting on social media about that. We're really trying to underline the importance of transparency. We know that's important to all of you, and we're going to be doing everything we can to get stuff out there. As I alluded behind the scenes, and I'll stop talking. There's a lot of stuff just to make sure from an administrative side. We're happy to have Jules on board now. If people contact the organization on the website, for example, those are coming straight into the organization. We have staff people and myself as a backup who are going to be monitoring those daily to make sure that those communications go wherever they need to go so that we're able to respond to them and take action on them as quickly as humanly possible. So again, I'll stop talking, but I'll tell you that if you have ideas, if there's something up there that you think could add to our intention to be as transparent as possible, please let us know. We'll be happy to figure out a way to get it done for you.
Thanks, Kevin. And as he mentioned, the website, we want that to be an easy resource for you all as you get questions to direct people to. We'll have, in time, obviously now you've adopted certain policies and there's staff, and there will be other things that we'll be utilizing the website for. Obviously, the grant function will be a key piece of what the foundation is doing. People will want to go to the website to find out what is the process to apply, and all of that over time, when the right policies are in place, will obviously be housed at the website, and people can get information there. I guess when we think about the PR piece specifically, or the strategic communication piece, I'm not exaggerating, and Holly can attest to it. Minutes after you all voted to work with my company in July, I was engaging and supporting the media relations function, so that started very immediately. And that's continued obviously through today and will continue beyond. But also worked really closely with Kevin on the content for the website, the messaging for the foundation. Kevin mentioned the release and obviously trying to make sure that our reporters, we have Hannah Gong, our AP here today. Sorry if I missed anybody else, but making sure that they're getting the information too. Obviously, they're critical in helping us get this information out to Ohioans across the state. We've built a very robust media list that, again, as Kevin mentioned, just breaking through some spam barriers is something we're going to be focusing on as we continue to push out more information. We'll take over some of the functions that the Benish team has been doing, like the meeting notices for the public. We'll also be sending out a meeting recap after every meeting, which, starting today and every meeting moving forward, that will go out broadly to our entire stakeholder list. And again, all of these efforts are aimed at, being very, fully and transparently communicating with the stakeholders, whether they're individuals or family members who themselves are dealing with substance use disorder, the advocates in the treatment and recovery community, healthcare, government officials, all of these, the judicial system, law enforcement. There are so many stakeholder groups who we want to make sure we're engaging, and we're very focused on getting this information out to them as best we can, as quickly as possible when there's news to share. Hopefully you all saw that last week we were able to get an op-ed by Catherine placed in the Plain Dealer. I think it was a very powerful piece. I've appreciated the opportunity to get to know Catherine, and it's really been an honor to work with her. And I just put a little excerpt from the op-ed up here, but over time, I want to have more pieces like this around Ohio, but as a starting point, I felt like it was a really good piece to lay out why this work is so important and really reiterate the commitment of those of you sitting around this table and why we're here today. Lastly, moving forward, obviously, this is the first presentation of, what will be, I assume, regular updates that you all will expect to get from us. And we are, I hope Catherine would agree, trying to have regular, clear communication with her and the executive committee on what we're doing to support the foundation. So that obviously will continue. But, it'll be, again, focusing on those immediate priorities for now, continuing the media relations piece, continuing to, push out good content to help educate Ohioans about the foundation. Again, building that social media presence, and then continuing that ongoing stakeholder engagement work. So those are the kind of key pieces that we are working on right now. And again, over time, as there's an executive director and there may be different, with the grant function picking up, we'll have different priorities that we'll focus on day to day, but the overarching priorities will remain pretty constant. So I hope we kept that. I know it's a long meeting. We tried to keep it pretty brief for you guys.
Questions?
Some counties got multi-million-dollar settlements from the pharmaceutical companies, and this public's confused, and it's confusing. So we're getting calls saying, well, these people, one county got $300 million. It's still an appeal, but that's out there. So the general public, all these lawsuits going on and all this money flowing. I don't think we can address who they are, but we need to know who we are. And what money we're talking about, is that question is coming up in the media and the public constantly when they see these lawsuits settling. And with all the counties, mental health and addiction lives and dies on web. It's very clear that this money is earmarked for specific issues, and it could be problematic down the road.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
We have prepared an FAQ that we would like to put on the website, and I think as soon as everyone was, we're just making sure our chair is comfortable with it, but the idea would be to put that up there, and hopefully that would be, again, another resource that you all could direct people to hit some of those frequently asked questions that you may be getting. And if there's something on there or something that's missing based on what you all are hearing as you're out in your communities and working with your regions, please let us know. because that can be a living, breathing document. We want it to be obviously accurate, but also helpful. And so just, let us know if there's something else that's missing that would be helpful to include and clarify.
Thank you. Brings up a question, so new to the show here. Who oversees these two fine people next to me? Who determines what content's going to go on the page? Is that just the chair? The website looks great, by the way, and the op-ed was wonderful, so your first at bat was very successful. But just curious, how do we determine what, is there a subcommittee for that?
So there is not one as of yet. Currently, they are reporting to me. And like Connie had stated earlier, they've been working directly with the executive committee to get these pieces up and running. So if it is the pleasure of the board, a committee can be developed.
I don't want to overcomplicate things. I just was curious as to.
Currently, they're reporting directly to me. Any other questions?
Can you just remind us, I know we have it, of what the website is?
OneOhioFoundation.com.
Thank you.
So, go ahead.
One more question?
No, go right
I
ahead.
was curious about, making sure that in our strategic messaging and in the work that we do, that we're representative of all corners of Ohio. So I'm from Region 14, and we have a very populous county, and then we have more very rural, less populated counties. And we know everybody's been affected significantly by the epidemic and this issue. So I'm wondering, how do you build in that voice for very different and unique and diverse and inclusive kinds of messaging? How do you build that into what you're doing?
Well, I think it starts with our board members, and I think that we've tried to as we've gotten media inquiries, help explain the different backgrounds that are represented here, but also I think there will be a lot of opportunities moving forward, and I've spoken with a few board members already to talk about the regional structures and process and the voices at the regional level weighing in to bring you all ideas that are coming to this table. And I think over time, there will be several opportunities just based on anecdotally what I've heard from board members already, that there's a lot of great collaboration happening at the regional and local level. And we'll really want to highlight that, whether it's through, op-eds or letters to the editor, but also I think there are great opportunities for stories, for local reporters that they want to hear how these groups are working together, who is a part of this, because there are many people from many different walks of life. It's not just government officials sitting at these regional levels making decisions. There are people with lived experience at the table guiding that work. And so that'll be part of, over time as we get our footing here and continue to push this out, doing some of that engagement with media, but also, Kevin, through the digital tools, will have the opportunity to post things, on Facebook or Twitter, highlighting different individuals should they so choose to share their stories. So we can build that into the plan as well.
Any other questions?
One of the questions that I just got was around when you Google the foundation, it doesn't show up. I know you and I
I knew
talked
this
about
one, I was
this.
hoping this
So-
one would be coming.
We almost got through it.
Only because it's technical. So
Yeah.
Here we go. I'll keep it as brief as possible. Any organization that launches initially is not going to immediately pop up in Google search results. The reason is because Google is a massive, massive algorithm machine. It's determining a couple things. It's determining relevance and it's determining popularity. And so if you're Walmart, for example, you have thousands and thousands and many more than that people every day going to the website. And so Google says, well, this is something people are really interested in. And so we're going to move it up to the top. Also, and so that's the popularity factor. That's something that's just going to take us a little bit of time. You'll notice that we're very intentional, for example, as you start to look at our social media posts, you'll see that we're often actually taking the time to put an op-ed or a release or something on the website And then we are providing a link to that in our social media post. And the whole point is to keep driving eyeballs and traffic back to that website to help manipulate this over time. The other issue is relevance. That's a box that we have largely checked. That's something that's based on words. I mean, as you see the website, there's all kinds of, the relevance of just the name. One Ohio Recovery Foundation is all over the website. That was done intentionally to try to manipulate this. That's something that's a possibility down the road. This is not where we're at yet. The board will have to make decisions about this, but another way, a shortcut is spending some money on what's called Google search ads. And it's something that allows you to kind of jump to the front of the line in that situation. But obviously it costs money to do that. And so that's a decision that the board will need to make down the road. But we're very mindful of this. You will not immediately find it. What we're also competing against is the governor's website, which gets a ton of traffic. They have recovery.ohio.gov, which gets a lot of its own traffic as well. And so because it's the same keywords, we're competing against it. So I think the realistic situation is that in the coming months, we hope to be in the top couple. But I don't want to overpromise that because I can't predict how many people are actually going to go to our website. Yes.
I just used Firefox when you were talking, and it was the second thing.
Well, that's great news. I just did a Google search and I couldn't find it at all.
Right.
Yeah.
I did Google and I couldn't find it.
Yeah. So that way.
It might be the governor's office website that you saw, because that pops up immediately.
Matt, it looked like.
Oh, what's that?
Is there a way to get the governor's office to put a link to our page on that page that you just referenced? Because that's what does pop up in there. Obviously, still support. That's a great idea. I checked with legal, make sure that's fine, but that's a great idea. So.
No, they're not. We talked about it last week, right?
Yeah.
We can,
I mean, if it's okay, Chair, I'll just quickly say, I'm Amy Chadwick from Recovery Ohio. Yeah, we have lots of the information from the One Ohio Foundation, and obviously the governor is really supportive. So with the launch of the website on Monday, I had already started to talk to our communications team member about how we can make sure that we're directing folks over to here when they're looking for information for the foundation. So the same way we'll check in with our legal folks, but we've already started to have conversations to be supportive and help us folks looking for information about the foundation to the foundation website and not to the Recovery Ohio website.
And as we build our email list, for example, and we get more people on that, and as we're, again, you'll notice as you start to get those emails, we're sending people back to the website to read things, and we're doing that on purpose. So it's a good question. It's something we're working on, and it's just going to take a little time.
Any other questions? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I do want to say, Kevin, the website is very user-friendly. I was able to move very quickly through the website. It's very user-friendly, so thank you.
Thank you.
And I know you've been working on the emails for those of us who requested. I know Jules is up and working. I just need to get with you for the other few to get those going.
Yeah, it's very simple. I can have those up within the day.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Thank you.
Next, on our items of discussion, the budget, with Jim being his first day, he did not get the budget done. Just saying. So, Jim will start working on that. We did have a great discussion this morning. Now that we have some dollars, we'll get that budget together, and start working through that process. That's all I have on the update for that. Personnel? Larry?
Yes, Madam Chair. We talked about Jim and Jules being added to the team. But in addition to that, last meeting before, that we have the RFP approved for the search firm. We did send that RFP back. The bids should be back by September 16th, and then we'll reconvene the search committee and then give a presentation on our recommendations back to the board in the next.
Thank you. We already covered insurance. Investment strategy, Don?
And I delivered a report, at the last meeting, nothing's changed since then. What will drive the, investment termination, and Jim and I have worked together in the past, we'll work on this, is when the board makes the determination on how much of the money will be distributed immediately to the 19 regions versus how much will be held back and invested long-term. So that'll be a board decision that drives the investment decision. But Jim and I'll be working together now that he's an employee.
Great, thank you. Okay, that brings us to the grant-making policy.
So included in the packet was just an outline. This was really to demonstrate to the board what's going to go into code that you just adopted. Thank you for that. Versus what will go in policy. So this is just, as I said, an outline as we've started to think through just how detailed this process will be. We'll introduce you to Claudia in just a minute. She's been very helpful as part of that process with Philanthropy Ohio. We've spoken to a number of other grant-making organizations to get a handle on their process. But just to sort of get your minds thinking about this, the actual policy will be considered through the Grant Oversight Committee. We now have a chair. It's Julie. Is that you? No,
I got.
Oh, yeah.
No.
Yes, okay. Tom. It's Tom, yes. So now that we have a chair of that committee, we can sort of work through this. I'm sure the public will be very excited to provide input on that process as well. So there's nothing other to report other than we've started thinking about it. And it's a pretty involved process. There's going to be a lot of steps to the policy. There'll be, the significant input from the regions. We heard you loud and clear that that was a very important process for you. So we built that into the Code of Regulations. We're going to build it into the grant-making policy for the regional share, for the statewide share. That'll be a different process where you're heavily relying upon the expert panel. It's part of some of the future steps that we'll have to take will be to appoint members of that expert panel. We're working now on the application for expert panelists. So it's a sequencing of events, but I think the number one takeaway that Catherine, you wanted to share was that we are starting the process. We're making progress. That's all I have.
We have a guest. Catherine, Claudia, if you want to stand up. Claudia has been with Philanthropy Ohio for a very long time, and neither of us will admit how long we've known each other. But she's been very helpful with us so far, and I'm hopeful that she'll be able to help the grants committee as well. So Claudia, why don't you just take a couple of minutes and tell the group about your experience and your most recent big money experience in grants.
Thanks, Marty. Madam Chair and Foundation Board members, it's my pleasure and privilege to be here today. Until January, I was the Chief Communications and Public Policy Officer for Philanthropy Ohio, which is a statewide association of foundations, corporate grant makers, individual philanthropists. And our mission is really to help all of those foundations in Ohio that are about to become more effective in their activities and operations. I transitioned to a part-time role in January, which is my version of retiring, to executive in residence at Philanthropy Ohio. And the majority of my role there is around collaboration. I work with Amy Chadwick and the governor's office around COVID recovery and rebuilding efforts, as well as public-private partnerships. Most recently, I worked with the Ohio Department of Education to help them with the grant-making process of $89 million federal dollars that were going to nonprofits that were doing summer learning and after-school enrichment programs for the next few years to help address the COVID learning loss that so many of our 1.7 million students across Ohio have evidenced in the last couple of years. And I'm sure many of you who are still working remote have kids back and forth from COVID, grandchildren, whatever, it's still with us. So I worked closely with the department from the development of the RFA to the scoring rubric and evaluation, recruited 120 different grant reviewers, managed all of their work as they reviewed 750 applications for this money, all the way through the process of orienting them to their work, and just a couple of weeks ago, convened them all for the summer learning activities, because the governor was really curious about what had happened during this first summer with the large amounts of money that have been allocated. So this was just one example. Going back 2 decades, I worked with the General Assembly and the Attorney General to set up the first Tobacco Cessation Prevention Foundation, and to help with its early operations, manage their first grant process. So a lot of this is just second nature to me, and really look forward to any ways that I and other staff at Philanthropy Ohio might be able to assist you as you get this foundation up and running, making the first grants, figuring out what makes sense in evaluation, staffing, providing some job descriptions, submitting to policy. So lots of ways that we can get help if we are allowed to.
You already have. Claudia, I'd like to thank Claudia for her efforts. It was the call with you that helped inform some of this. That's
Great, thank you so much. Okay. Inclusion policy.
So the only update I have there is that we hope to bring that through a committee, likely the executive committee, but we've been having a number of conversations with members of the community about how we can look at inclusion much more broadly. We know that we spoke last time, this is a board where the appointing authority makes it more challenging to look at a diverse set of board members as a whole. And so how are we thinking about inclusion very intentionally throughout all of the work that we're doing? So I will look forward to sharing the draft with these.
Great, thank you. All right, update on pending litigation.
Yeah, and there's no need for an executive session on this. I sent to the board copies of the answer and the motion for judgment on the pleadings in the open meetings case, which is the one that is moving at the moment. That's the Franklin County case. I have in front of me, and I'll let you know, I have the agreed scheduling order, which I just sent to the executive committee, so you'll have the dates. But the important date coming up is October 27th, when the legal team will appear for oral arguments in front of Judge Surratt, Franklin County Common Pleas Court, to argue in favor of the motion for judgment on the pleadings. So if anybody has any questions or needs interpretation of the legal jargon, either I or the senator can enlighten you about the legal jargon, or Don around your still there he is. So, and John, we got enough lawyers at the table and the judge to explain this if anybody needs explained. But we're hoping on the motion for judgment on the pleadings, we're arguing that we simply don't fit within the statute. And so therefore, we should not be, the court doesn't really determine that we are subject to the Open Meetings Act because we don't meet certain definitions. The pleadings obviously are on the court docket. I don't know if they've been posted yet for downloading, but anybody will be able to retrieve them from the court docket. Should any of you miss them and need some reading to cure your insomnia, let me know and I'll send them to you.
Well, what was the date again?
Yeah, we did also answer in the Supreme Court on the F and Records case. I'm sorry.
Did you get that?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, we did answer in the Supreme Court. An answer, for those who are not familiar with this, is a fairly simple document. You look at the allegations the plaintiff makes, and you either accept them or deny them. Or we've been through that exercise with the Supreme Court. So all the deadlines have been met thus far.
I'd like to address the board on one item. We just talked about the grant making, and we had mentioned this last month, but I think it's important to reiterate that it is unlikely that we would be able to disperse city funds in 2022. We want to set the expectations. I know a lot of people are interested in what it's going to look like and when they're going to get the monies. But, obviously Tom's going to chair that committee, but it's going to take some time to develop the committee, come up with policies, figure it out, work with, our guests and make sure we do it right. So It will probably be 2023 before we disperse funds. If anybody asks to as board members. So we want to make sure we don't set false expectations in that regard.
And in response to that, the monies haven't come in yet. So the monies are now sitting at the National Settlement Administrator. So that is still being structured. So they don't have their infrastructure in place for those dollars to go back out. We all know that the 30% that is going to local governments, the second payment is coming from the National Settlement Administrator, as well as what will be our first payment and second payment, and then of course, all future payments. So that infrastructure is not in place, so we're not even quite sure yet when those dollars will come to us. So I know they are working to get their vehicle in place to get those monies out to us.
Question. There's a formula when, at the end of the day, what each region's going to get a percentage.
Correct. And that is in the MOU. So, and it's exhibit D.
Okay.
So there is already formulas structured that were part of the MOU on the percentage that will be allocated of the dollars that we get in once the board decides how much of those dollars are going back out to the regions, what percentage each region then will be allocated for projects.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
step, tracing it further back upstream. This is a settlement involving several states. If somebody wanted to find out the formula or how it was determined what Ohio's share was going to be, how would they do that?
There's a settlement agreement, which it's, I don't know, how many pages, Marty? 800?
Well, with all the attachments, it's something like 800 pages. So, but I'm happy to figure out how to upload it to you.
I think the national settlement is on.
Yeah.
You can pull the website.
Well,
That would be interesting.
I
Not necessary to have a lot of work.
Are there any other questions? Well, we moved through in record time today. We're not going to be here past 3 o'clock. We're not going to be past 2. So at this point, like a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
Any opposed?
I just want to stay.
Motion carries. Yeah, you're welcome to stay. Thank you. Safe travels, everyone.